here I am sitting, Oom Schalk Lourens. He's a character that was created by Herman Charles Bosman. He used to be, like to be known as Herman Charles Bosman, but that's another story. Bosman was born in 1905 and died in 1951, and between those years he wrote prolifically short stories, and he created Schalk Lourens as his narrator in many of the stories. In fact, half the amount of stories that he wrote were told by Schalk Lourens, and the other half were just called the voorkamer stories. Although there are there are a couple of voorkamer stories that Schalk Lourens can tell quite well too, actually. It's actually quite fun. So I decided to become that character, you know, Schalk Lourens, being an actor and learning how to tell stories as we go along. And Patrick Maynard was before me dressed up as what you see in front of you now, as Schalk Lourens. And he went a long way until, sadly, he passed on in 2007, and then people came to me and said, why don't I do Schalk Lourens? So here I am doing Schalk Lourens, and it's a pleasure to be here on Hipe TV, you know, telling you all about Schalk Lourens with my pipe, and I've even brought a little bit of mampoer, which I'm not going to share with you. I'll just have a sip myself. So cheers, here's to the future. Yeah, and here I'm sitting with my director, Celia Music, and it's always important to have somebody sitting in the auditorium to see that the actor doesn't make mistakes or go wrong, or, you know. So tell us, Celia, how did you come about directing this fellow sitting with you?
Well, somebody once said to you, you might remember, why don't you play Ooom Schalk in Herman Charles Bosman's famous stories? And you thought about it, and then you came to me and you said, would I direct it? And I was thrilled about it. And I have to confess that I didn't know Herman Charles Bosman's stories at all.
Yeah, isn't that nice, eh?
Not
Isn't that nice?
at all. And we've gone on a journey together,
yeah.
A very beautiful journey, and we've discovered what Herman Charles Bosman is and who he is and what he gave to the world in his stories, what a fantastic writer he is. And in my opinion, without it going to your head,
yeah.
David is Oom Charles.
Oom Schalk.
Oom Charles.
Oom Charles.
Please edit that. Oom Schalk.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. Thank you for that compliment, Celia. I really appreciate it. And my head's not getting that big, although it is quite big. but you know, the interesting thing is, dear Hipe TV, we spent a lot of time just sitting, reading and rereading. I thought, yes, when are we going to get up and move the thing? But then again, stories are not like that. You know, you don't tell stories by acting them out. You tell stories so that you allow the audience to experience the stories in their souls, in their heart, in their minds. You know, that's really what the story is all about. So the audience goes away with their image of the story.
Absolutely.
And dear old Celia sitting next to me here, she said, no, we don't have to get up and move. We just sit and look at this, read it again. Bliksem, and I had to read it so many times. I mean, she was a taskmaster. Such an old Yiddish mama, you know. Where can you go wrong? You know, I mean, there's some lovely stories that blend in so well with Celia's background, you know, and her culture and that. So I've got to give a few compliments on that side as well, you know. We've got to bounce compliments off one another to keep one another going, because sometimes, you know, it's damn hard to tell a story. But we're getting by, and we're traveling around the countryside all the way to, where was it the other day? Ishawi, you know where Ishawi is? And that's far away. And I went up there, and I went to Morgan Bay too, there on the Transkei wild coast there. But those oaks were pretty wild. But and it was a great fun though. And then down to Addo recently. I was in Addo telling a few stories, sitting around a huge big fire. And we told the stories to the local oaks from Addo. Addo is more where the elephants are, but I wasn't with the elephants there, rather with the leopard. I told a lovely story about the leopard lying down with me. It's called In the Patak Shade. You'll hear it one day, I promise you. But Celia, tell me more. How do you go about directing this oak? I mean, didn't he give you a bit of a hard time?
I think hard time is possibly a very hard way of putting it. I think more of a challenge would be correct in saying that I had to get the David out of Ooom Schalk and the Ooom Schalk into Ooom Schalk. And I think when we took the show to Cork Bay, for example, they had a billboard, and you might remember, they had David Muller in Ooom Schalk, and I changed it to David Muller is Ooom Schalk, and I left it like that. And the owner of the Cork Bay Theatre was very happy with that. He said that was brilliant, because that is what I feel he has become. People are calling him Oom now. I think they've forgotten his real name.
Yeah.
It's just that, yeah, how do I manage to do it? I think you drink it in, you take it in, and it's first time. As we look at a sentence together, I say, which is the important word? Let's work on the important word. I think it's that girl's name. And he gives it straight away without repeating it. It's pleasure, absolute pleasure.
Of course, we're talking about Pauline Gerbe. Yeah, that's
yes,
the next.
That's our new one.
The next one. We've got the whole love story going in the next show, which we're going to call Ooom Schalk with friends.
Ooom Schalk and Friends.
Ooom Schalk and Friends. Celia always gets it right. I struggle a little bit with these titles. Ooom Schalk and Friends. But that's an interesting thing about the title David Muller is. You know, it's quite difficult to get out of that and into the other. But we managed to succeed eventually. And yeah, maybe we can tell a few stories on Hipe TV too, because it'd be lekker, you know. I think we get some people who can't get to the theatre, you know. That's what television is all about. You can reach people somewhere in their house, in their homes, you know. And we'll tell a few more stories one day on television.
And I think there's room for stories. I think stories are dying, and they shouldn't die. I think everybody should sit with their children and their grandchildren and their peers and tell stories. And never mind about all this kind of texting and not talking to each other. One needs to talk.
Yeah, that's technology that I'm still learning to comprehend, you know, this modern technology like cellular phones and that kind of thing, you know, mobile phones. But you know, an interesting story I heard the other day about the Trojan horse. The Trojan horse was a story that was told 1,000 years before the birth of Christ even, and Muhammad and all those boys. And it's quite fascinating how the Trojan horse has come to us all those years down to us. You know, you watch out for the Greeks, you know, when they bring gifts. Very often inside the gift is a whole army waiting to attack the Turks, yeah. Because that's how the Trojan horse came about. And that's a fascinating story. And I think that's what Bosman made. He made a Trojan horse. And inside the Trojan horse, he put a lot of stories. But these stories aren't like a bunch of army oaks that go and kill everybody, you know, like what's happening in the Middle East and the Far East and the bad East and the good East. And you know, it's not a bunch of fun stories, you know, inside this Trojan horse. And that's what we were delivering. So maybe we'll come to your doorstep and deliver a Trojan horse full of lekker stories. Hey, Celia?
Absolutely. I'd love to do that. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it.